I remember playing Dungeons & Dragons for the first time with my father. I read the pamphlets from the first edition and I thought I knew what I was doing, but my only experience with RPGs was from the Sega Master System, Genesis, so the reality was...
Listen, you do not know shit about fuck, my man.
So I rolled a character and found a friend in town who would join me on this epic adventure that was sure to be rife with struggle, treasure, damsels, and triumph, stretching over multiple days of playtime. We set off on our adventure, and when we finished traveling and could go on no further, we set up camp for an innocuous night of sleep. But we did not wake up. No. Because in our sleep, bandits came and slit our fucking throats. My mistake? It was not the lack of keeping watch or the lack of alarms set up around the campsite. No, my mistake was thinking that this was a video game. Yeah, the harsh reality set in immediately. If I was going to play effectively, I needed to not think of this like a game, but to look at it like I was in a real world with real world dangers. A world that wants me dead. Dungeons & Dragons was the first game I can remember that allowed me the freedom to get lost completely in a world and a character and let me play the way that I wanted to. I had that experience again recently with Kingdom Come Deliverance. It introduced me once again to a world that wants me dead, and I can't get enough of it. So let's dig in, shall we? Why is immersion important? Well, put simply, immersion's important because when it's broken, the result is distraction. When you're paying attention to something, you absorb the messaging, and for the moment you become lost in whatever world, product, or story you're being shown. When you are distracted, you become aware of whatever flaws caused it. The flaws suddenly become very easy and apparent to see at that point, and you just can't unsee them. The game will then, from that point on, struggle to get you back into that immersed state that a game like this actually requires. Immersion is also an important learning tool. When immersed, say in a new language, you are thrust into a situation where your native language is useless to you. It is the linguistic version of being thrown into the deep end of the pool without water wings. In order to communicate, which people in immersion training find out very quickly is a skill that we cannot live without, your ability to learn a language comes much more quickly, not through just repetition, which is also a helpful tool, but through a need. You have a need that is based in survival. Without the ability to communicate, we cannot work together, trade effectively, or understand the intentions of one another. Immersion is important for learning in a game, which comes in handy when absorbing the game world and your place in it, as well as understanding the various systems that support it. When we are immersed into a game, it is possible for what designers call emergent gameplay to float to the surface naturally, without being tutorialized, because in your search for answers, you may find yourself trying things that you never thought of. Immersion is also important as it doesn't distract you from its goal with things that, given the context of the world, would be out of place. So does Kingdom Come break your immersion at all? Yes. Yes, it fucking does. Man, does this game have some bugs? I'm not just talking about minor annoyances like the fact that, at least on my rig, the game hijacks my fucking gamma settings and makes everything on my monitor an eye-bleeding bright white even after I've closed the game, or simple things like guys falling from the sky or hanging out inside of a wall. No, I'm talking about crashes, and some of them are almost game-breaking. Take the crashes on one of the missions on the main storyline. When you get to a mission called Pestilence, you'll get to a certain point where you're supposed to question some townfolk. Upon doing this, you will enter one of the buildings and encounter a crash. Now, being a good open world game, it doesn't require you to finish questioning everyone. No, if you feel like you've gathered enough info, you could go on to the next part of the mission, and everything seems fine. But then you get to a part where you have to question a prisoner. Now, if you didn't finish the question and answers portion of the mission, guess what? The fucking game crashes upon exiting dialogue. So to make sure I wasn't crazy, I went to the game's forums and started looking up the crash, and sure enough, yeah, this is a known problem. A known problem that was known even before they published their latest patch. Let me say that again. They knew about this bug and released a patch that doesn't fix the main story. Only Bethesda's allowed to get away with that kind of thing, Warhorse. Alright? Get your shit together. So to get around this, you have to pickpocket the prisoner. Without engaging in dialogue and finding out critical info that you need to take back to Sir Radzig, as well as missing out on escorting the prisoner to him to be interrogated. You have to miss out on content and, most importantly, role-playing because of a bug that should have been caught with even the leanest QA guidelines in place. I mean, I'm just flabbergasted. I don't know what to say about this. Now, when I encountered these bugs, I stopped playing. I just walked away frustrated and said, I hate this fucking game. I had said I hate this fucking game so many times I can't even count them. But each time I did that, either because I died and lost progress or because the game fucking crashed, I still kept coming back to it and later finding myself just having a great old fucking time, almost immediately forgetting all the bullshit that came before it. But crashes are a thing that we should touch on, especially since the save system is a little touched in the head. You can only save your game when sleeping in a bed or when you're using a sort of rare savior schnapps. Now, sleeping ain't so bad when it actually works, but for some reason, certain beds at certain times of the day will not let you save in them. I've had times where I have slept, thought the game saved, only to find out it didn't and lose about 20 minutes of progress. Then there were times, like the quest above, where I have finished a quest only to have it crash and force me to do the whole goddamn thing again. Now look, I actually like this save system. I know a lot of people are giving it shit. I actually like it. It really makes you take the actions you choose seriously. It makes every fight tense, every pickpocket a potential life or death situation. It adds so much to the game. But, and there is a but, if you are going to use a system like this, you better make damn sure your head and your ass are wired on tight, because if not, and your game crashes, you're just wasting my time. Kingdom Come immerses you from the very beginning of the game, however, in the way that it shows you the life of a lowly blacksmith's son. Now, it accomplishes this in a couple of ways. Combat is handled in a grounded sort of way, but you wouldn't know it from looking at some of these reviews. I mean, for example, a lot of the reviews of this game have stated things like, the combat is clunky. In fact, the difficulty of the game seems to be where the game takes the brunt of its critiques. The problem is, yeah, at first the combat is clunky, and guess what? It's supposed to be that way. Remember back when I was telling you about my first experience with Dungeons & Dragons? Remember how I died? Now, why did I die? I died because I wasn't immersed in the world. I didn't believe the world I inhabited was real and subject to the laws of nature and the whim of chaos and all that. And for that mistake, I paid with the death of my character. The same is true for Kingdom Come. When you start out, who are you? You're a lazy son of a blacksmith who spends his nights drinking, fighting, and fucking the local barmaid. You are not in any way a trained sword fighter, no matter how many times you ran through the basics with the local mercs. When wielding the sword your father made, you can't even cut the shaft of wood in the ground. Your swing is weak. Your swing is the swing of the untrained. The game has told you time and time again that you're weak. It isn't the game's fault you don't listen. It isn't the game's fault you went off Skyrimming around the map getting murdered by all types of bandits and nasty men out there to snatch what little money you got in your coin purse. Instead of you starting off as Billy Badass, who's trained as a fighter for several years before the start of the game, you are a nobody, and your skills reflect this more than any other game available. Alright, think about it like this. How long do you think it would take for a complete newbie to get good at swinging a 3.5-pound longsword? A week? A month? The answer, in my experience, is about a year, and then you'll still make stupid mistakes. Now take boxing for instance. It took a month before I could throw a solid stiff jab and just the basic punches. I spent days practicing the footwork and hip rotations at work, while cooking dinner, while standing in the line at Del Taco. It took me a solid half of a year for the lessons to finally click into my brain to where I could start using cups and parries and slips to close the distance and land punches during sparring. I spent another couple of months just being a counter puncher, which didn't work against aggressive fighters. Combos took even longer to start using effectively, and most of it was just overcoming the fear of leaving myself open to landing multiple shots. In that time, I failed over and over again. Luckily, I failed in sparring and not a real fight. Kingdom Come knows all this. You know, it knows that you aren't Billy Badass, because no one is Billy Badass at first. They all start off sparring. And in a brilliant move from the developers, they started you off as a complete pussy and make you spar to get better. When I completed the first few quests in the game and got the chance to spar, I sparred for hours, raising my skills as far as I could stand to do in that setting. And when I finally went out to battle with bandits and the like, the combat, which up to that point was admittedly a cryptic, muddled mess, became a strategic chess match where I was using feints to lower the guard of the opponent, and I used perfect parries to close distance for a push that would leave them open for an overhead smash. Combos were used to confuse the foe and knock them off balance, get them to drop their weapon, or even knock them down. The journey in Kingdom Come from peasant to knight was immersive because the journey was tough, fraught with failure and fear of death. Every fight was a duel that dragged on, each participant struggling to balance their stamina use with their attacks and positioning. The idea of fighting more than one opponent led me to another moment of immersion. Everything in this game just feels right, down to the way armor reacts to your weapons, to the way you swing a sword, and most importantly, the way combat with multiple kitted out opponents usually goes. Eventually you'll get to a mission where, behind a mill, you will talk to the sister of a man that you're looking for, and you'll be accosted by some bandits who are looking for the same guy. Now, being the heroic knight, I decided to tell the men I wouldn't help them, and all 5 of those fully kitted out bandits surrounded me and took turns wailing on me until I saw that dreaded game over screen. Now see, up to this point, I wasn't paying the game any heed. I wasn't listening to it as it tried to tell me I was a real man, not Geralt of Rivia. 2 men was tough enough, but 5? Impossible. But I wasn't hearing it. I kept trying again and again, trying to cheese the AI up some steps, figuring they wouldn't be able to get me up there, and they did. Each and every frickin' time. Finally, I decided to be smart and tell them where the guy was. I followed them to the farm, watched them kill my only lead, and because I cooperated with them, and took their money to cooperate with them, they invited me to the very base that I was looking for. That was when it all clicked into place for me. This is real life. You know how hard it is to fist fight 2 guys? Yeah, it's pretty fucking difficult. 5 guys? You better curl up and hope they get tired of kicking you. That's when I figured it out. This is a simulation. The very same simulation that I have been begging for in my video about open worlds. That brings me to Brewing Potions. Now, when brewing a potion in most games, all you need to do is just gather ingredients, hit a button, watch an animation, and BAM! Potion. In Kingdom Come, you actually brew the damn potions. I mean, I don't mean you just walk up to a table and put ingredients into a pot. I mean, you gather ingredients, read instructions in a recipe book, take handfuls of those ingredients and either mix them in a pestle and grind them, throw them in a cauldron and using the bellows to bring them to a boil, all the while timing it by turning the hourglass a certain amount of turns. Then you can distill it down or pour it into a vial. You do all these things manually, and god damn it, this is what I was talking about. I mean, I really feel like I am doing something here. Each potion I make feels like I am accomplishing something, and it is kind of fun to do that whole process. Most of all, it immerses me into the world and the activity that I am doing. It also immerses me into a time period where nothing was an easy process. Life was work, and that work was hard work. Every system in the game is like that. Want to save some money and repair your own weapon? Go up to a whetstone, pump the gear to get it going, push down on the blade and rub it back and forth. Want to learn how to shoot the bow? Better learn how to do it without a targeting reticle because there's no UI in the Middle Ages, son. Want to learn how to read? Better seek out a scribe and pay him to teach you how. Because you are a blacksmith's son and you never needed to know how to read. The bow and reading were 2 of my favorite activities because of how they approached each individual activity. Now for the bow, I was a little hesitant at first. I never seemed to know where the arrow was going to land and none of it made any sense. Then I went to the shooting range. Now sure enough, after about 20 minutes of shooting, I was landing headshots on bandits with ease without the use of a targeting reticle. Long shots, short shots, I was landing them all on instinct because on some level, perhaps through memorization or, I don't know, muscle memory, the bow became second nature, and a good headshot can even up the odds when you're outnumbered. I really started to feel like I understood the bow as a weapon, not an in-game item, but as a mechanic and a tool. With reading, after you learn the initial skill, you're still pretty shit at it. I mean, it requires many more books of skill for the jumbled mess of words to form coherent sentences. Because Henry can't read, neither could I. That's how immersion works. If we can see, sense, and experience in some way what the in-game character is experiencing, the distance between us and the character and the game world is shortened. The mechanics bring us into the game world and make us feel like we're a part of it. Suddenly I was no longer cut off from an entire part of quests. Now I was able to identify written clues. I could read letters and alchemical ingredients. In the early stages, when words were all jumbled up, I had to piece together the words to form what I believed was right, but I could never be sure if the town that I hadn't been to yet was spelled right or if I was looking for something that didn't exist. At this stage of knowledge, Henry, the character, would be unsure of his comprehension of what he was reading. The immersion here works because I too was unsure of my comprehension, and it put me right into Henry's shoes. I was investigating the written word. Both I and Henry were learning to read in-game together. Kingdom Come is not without its flaws. It has the typical bugs like bodies phasing through walls, people walking into objects, and moonwalking in an attempt to phase through an object instead of just simply going around it. Crashes, yes, lots of crashes. Somehow, despite all this, my immersion was never permanently broken. And I believe this was achieved by the systems the game put into place, despite its flaws, which immersed me completely into a historically accurate portrayal of what it might be like to be a peasant who eventually rises to knighthood, or a cutthroat, or a thief, or a diplomat. Immersion is the key to this game's success, and it is clearly in the running for Best RPG of 2018, at least for me. And this has been a rant from Strat-Edgy, and now that you heard it, go play some games. And if you like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. Make sure you share it with all your friends. It really helps me out a lot here, and I super appreciate it. Super duper appreciate it even. And if you want to see more content like this, make sure you hit that subscribe button. And because YouTube is, full of bullshit now, make sure you hit that little bell too, or else you'll never even know that I've posted a ton of videos in the last 3 months, and you'll think that this video is the newest video in 3 months. And I've got a ton of videos. So, go do that. And until next time, peace.